So welcome everyone, and thank you for being here this afternoon for How to Get Published with the Press or Start One of Your Own. Moderating this discussion today is James Coates, and with him to talk about their own small press adventures is Nakia Cheney, Eric Devon, Kamari Carter-Hawkins, and Hiram Sims.
Woo!
My name is Katie Porter, and I'm Executive Director of Inlandia Institute, a literary and cultural arts nonprofit based in inland Southern California. Before we begin, Inlandia Institute respectfully acknowledges and recognizes our responsibility to the original and current caretakers of the land, water, and air, the Cahuilla, Tongva, Luiseno, and Serrano peoples, and all of their ancestors and descendants, past, present, and future. Today, the Inlandia region is home to many indigenous peoples from all over the world, and we express our gratitude to them for allowing us the opportunity to live and work on these homelands. And now, just a few housekeeping notes. First, I want you to know to please keep yourself on mute until we reach the last portion of our program, where we will open it up for live questions, at which point use the raise your hand feature to be called on, and we will answer the questions in the order that they are, the hands are raised. Also, if you do have a question that comes up before we get to that point, please type it into the chat and we will try and get to it as soon as possible. Also note that there is closed captioning available for this. So click on the CC icon at the bottom of your screen. And we are also recording this, and it is also being live streamed on Facebook. So after the event, if you are unable to watch the entirety of it, you can go back and watch it again on Facebook, share it with your friends, or you can also go to our YouTube channel probably tomorrow, realistically, by the time it is up there. Now, about our host. Author, speaker, and poet James Coates was born in Los Angeles and raised in Southern California. He has an intense feeling for all things creative. He strives to capture authentic self-expression through his work. James' creative bent tends toward photography, painting, and writing. Coates, a nationally featured poet, won the 2021 San Gabriel Poetry Slam, and Coates has published a number of poetry collections. So without further ado, let's bring James on to tell you a little bit more about himself. Here, welcome, James.
Hello, everyone. So glad that you could be here with us and for How to Publish. Oftentimes I get the question when I tell people that I'm a writer, that I write poetry and I have a book out, is people say that they also want to write a book, but they don't know where to start. They don't. They think it's wonderful and they have a story that they want to tell, but there's a disconnect between where they are and how to actually get it into a book or get it out there into the world. And so I decided to bring some friends of mine that have a little bit of experience doing these various things. Full disclosure, I have a relationship with all of them here along my publishing journey. Nakia was one of the first people I talked to when I was interested in publishing my first poetry collection, and I got wonderful guidance about why I might want to publish, some steps to take during publishing, and ultimately I decided to self-publish. Kamari was an instructor of mine in my publishing program through CLI, and helped me develop the voice of the book, helped to workshop the poems in the book that just came out. Midnight and Mad Dreams. There's the book right here. Very excited about it. It came out last Saturday. under World Stage Press, which happens to be at the publishing house of Hiram Sims, and he's one half of that. And then Eric Devon, we both published our self-published poetry collections early on, near the same time. And we were bouncing feedback off each other and working on our second collections. We went to book fair together and tabled together. So I've seen this publishing panel grow in all the beautiful work and people they're able to put out. And so I just wanted to bring them together to help y'all out there get some more insight and guidance into publishing. So with that being said, I want to bring up Nakia to tell us a little bit about herself and our organization and what she does and who she helps and all that good stuff.
Hello, everybody. It's really good to be here today. Thank you, James, for inviting me. I'm really, really appreciative of that. And also being able to see some people from the publishing world and the poetry world that I normally would not be able to. So my name is Nakia Cheney. I'm a poet and educator. I teach at a community college. Right now I'm located in Santa Cruz, California, not in the Inland Empire, but most of my work started in San Bernardino. And I have several books of poetry, and I also have a memoir that's out with Inlandia right now. But if we're going to be talking about publishing, I really feel that that's an interesting journey. Jammy Publishing is my organization, and we started Jammy back in 2013, so it's quite old. Right now we have 14 books of poetry that we've published, and we're also focusing on books that are really interesting in an interesting way. We want to publish authors who are doing community service, who are working out in the community in some impactful way. So our last books of poetry have been anthologies for Women Who Submit, which is an organization based in LA, and then another anthology for another literary organization. So I love to talk about this. I love to be here. And again, I'm just really happy to be here.
Thank you, Nakia. We're happy to have you here as well. Next up, I want to bring up Eric Devon from Innate Divinity Publishing, or books, Innate Divinity Books.
That's good. What's going on, James? Appreciate you, sir. Thank you for inviting me. What's up, everyone? I'm Eric Devon. I am representing Innate Divinity Books. We are located in San Bernardino, California. Inland Empire is the area we are servicing. Now, of course, we do feel like we want to publish anywhere. It says that I need to unmute myself. I'm already unmuted, so let's say later. Okay. Am I visible? Do we see Eric?
We see you and we hear you. You're good.
Right. Moving on. So Innate Divinity Books was started in 2018. The way it came about, I had self-published, like James mentioned. I self-published my first collection in 2017. And I loved the process. And I was working with another poet who inspired me to self-publish my book. And he was giving me so much good advice and so many good tips. I realized he's a wealth of knowledge. And then I realized I had a certain skill set. And I started helping him with his work. And then other people started reaching out and saying, hey, where did you get your book done? I did it myself. Can you help me? And so started to realize there is a market for people just seeking knowledge. And Innate Divinity Books started off simply wanting to help share what we know and share some of our skill set with people who were looking to self-publish initially. And we decided that we could use our combination of skills and create something a little more substantial, something with a little more heft and weight to it. So we started looking for, or not even so much looking for, but when people who were already coming to each of us for advice, we put our skills together and created Innate Divinity Books. The title, the name comes from one of the lines in a poem about the creative time of day. For me, it's early morning. So the question, let's see, tell us about your organization, how we got into publishing. Innate Divinity Books, we also brought on another talented poet with an eye for editing, Micah Tasaka. And Micah had some visions and some ideas about expanding beyond the typical process of publishing, instead of simply focusing on putting books out into the world. Michael was thinking along the lines of, how do we collaborate with the community? How do we bring in different art forms? How do we help people who have a skill set get paid also? So we're looking at creating workshops and doing readings and letting other people who have skill sets, hey, come in and show some other people how to do what it is that you know how to do, sharing knowledge. And who do we serve? Mainly Inland Empire, Southern California. However, we are open to publishing anywhere. In fact, our first two poets that we've published aren't even necessarily in the Inland Empire. First book, Ghosts of Menace Street. And our next book actually came from a CLI poet, Girl Teeth, and we're excited about both of those projects. What services do we offer? We offer editing, obviously. We offer formatting, cover design. We do book layouts, anything related to the process of putting your book into the world. We offer those services. And then as far as publishing, we do publish. It's very selective. So it's a little bit about Innate Divinity Books. I'm grateful for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for sharing that. Yeah, Girl Teeth. I seen Christina last week reading in OC, and I also saw Jaha there as well, reading from her book, which is published with Mama's Kitchen Press. So let's invite Kamari up. Tell us a little bit about Mama's Kitchen Press.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Kamari Carter Hawkins. I am a poet, author, and the founder of Mama's Kitchen Press, MKP, which I will reference it as. So a little bit about the organization, how it started. Well, it started out with me in that my first book, Death by Comb, was published by Real Stage Press, and I was the managing editor there for about 3.5, 4 years, and it was like wonderful, and I absolutely loved it. And we went to AWP, Association of Writers and Writers Programs, and when I walked around the book fair, I counted on one hand how many organizations that were Black and or brown owned, not just put in front of the store, like, oh, hey, we're here, but not really here. And I said, oh man, I felt this strong desire in that moment that said, like, hey, we need to have more of our voices. But that was back in 2018, 19. So Mama's Kitchen Press didn't really happen until last year, 2021. It was just like a thought. And the idea came from me being in the kitchen with my grandmother and my mom, and we were talking, and it just dropped right there, Mama's Kitchen Press. But even then, I was like, 2019, the end of 2019, and I didn't do anything with it. And so the idea, so that's how I got into publishing, was like being a part of CLI, being a part of Real Stage Press, having my book out and just falling in love with the process. But I've always loved books, always been a bookworm, always adored it. And then I was like, I want my own, but I wanted to like highlight voices that felt really good. So in my mind, it was like chicken soup for the soul. I grew up on those books, and I said, we need those back. We need that feeling back, but like focused on, Black people. And that is what my initial heart was with it. And so it started off as an anthology press, but anthologies are, they take a lot of work. And I was like, okay. So then I started going into actually self-publishing services. So I'm known as the book doula, and I was like, I want to serve my community with like my eye and help. So that was the first service that we really did, was helping people self-publish or a la carte services. It became more of a traditional arm. We added that traditional arm once. I spoke with Jaha, and she was like, I want my book out. I heard you have Mom's Kitchen Press. I love that name. Let's go. And I was like, okay. So I credit her for like pushing me into the traditional. So initially it was just anthologies and self-publishing services. So that is the services we do. Who do we serve? We prioritize Black voices, and we also serve writers and poets. So that is my time, and that is MKB.
Thank you for that, Kamari. Appreciate you. And last but not least, let's invite up the captain of the clique, Hiram Sims, who founded CLI, which helps authors and writers put together books.
What's up, everybody? Hiram Sims here. And first, I just want to say I'm hiding from my 6 children in one of my daughter's bedrooms. And so I'm, if you hear somebody banging on the door, that's one of my children trying to get back in their room. So first, I just want to say I'm super excited to be here. So happy to see some CLI representation both on the panel and in the participants section. But I'm here to represent World Stage Press. So I co-founded World Stage Press with Connie Williams. Both of us are a long time residents of the World Stage Performance Gallery in Leimert Park, which was started by Kamal Daoud, incredible poet, and Billy Higgins, master drummer. And so what had happened was right around might have been 2014, I actually had a different small press called LA Bookshelf, and we were kind of struggling as far as trying to pay for this office space. I'm gonna tell you like the real story. So we were kind of struggling we had rented this like space in Culver City. It was like $400 a month, which is pretty sad when I think about that now. But we were struggling, and at that time, we had guaranteed all students that went through CLI that they would get published. Like guaranteed that it would happen. And at that time, we only had about like 11, 12 students coming through the program a year. So I knew that, we were going to sort of like, not only create, but just like really staff a press so we can, get it going. So we had LA Bookshelf, and we had our various struggles. And then one time I was outside of the world stage with Connie, and he said, I always want to start a press. And I said, what would you call it? And he was like, World Stage Press, duh. And so I thought that that was sort of like a magic moment, because behind him was this like very large room, like the world stage itself. And so we needed space, and then he wanted to create a press. And so sort of like I had this ability to create books. I also had a bunch of authors that came through my program. And so he sort of had the authority over that space, if that makes sense. And so that's how World Stage Press began. we started working on books from the first season of CLI. We are currently, regarding CLI, in season 10, and that was season 1. And so every Wednesday night we were there for, I should say Wednesday from 12 to 2, we were there making books. Me and Nadia Hunter Bay, who was a student in the class. And so um, that was a lot of fun, because we knew them. Like we had been hanging out with these poets already for a year, and like we knew a lot about their work, and so we just wanted to help put them out. So we started in using very rudimentary tools like Microsoft Word to do layouts, and other, just like really basic websites to make book covers and things like that. But as the years went on, the press grew in skill and in staff. And so now we have 6 people working for the press. Over the last 8 years, we've published about 64 books, which also include a lot of the classics. So the mission of World Stage Press is the creation and proliferation of African American literature and beyond. And I just briefly want to talk about how I think a press having a mission is very important, because you can find authors who align with that mission and ultimately ones that don't. And so the World Stage, when we were writing the mission, I was talking to an amazing poet named Sequoia, or rather listening to a recording of her, and she said that the World Stage was a repository of African American art, but that it was not limited to African Americans. And I thought that that was powerful, and so that's what we wanted to do with the World Stage. Uh, we said the mission was the creation, meaning that we actually invent literature. Um, the proliferation means we want to share it. The African American literature is the focus, and then the beyond represents people who might not be Black, but who we just want to publish. So that's the mission statement, and we're just super proud. We got books in every state in the United States. We got sold books in many countries of the world. Kamari herself has books in Africa. She's worldwide, known everywhere. And but recently I was like, we're only gonna publish good looking people. So that's why we publish James Coates. Like you have to be good looking with long hair. So that's World Stage Press.
Thank you, Hiram. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I have purchased books from all of these presses, all of the panelists here, and they put out really good books. Like, not only is it designed and designed well and professional, but their selection of authors that they choose to publish are excellent as well. So now I want to jump into the questions on how to publish, like what that even looks like. So we'll bring the panelists up. Where we at? We'll transition to that section where we'll talk, have the panelists answer some questions about publishing and about, how they started their press, and then in the end, we'll have a chance for you to ask your questions as well. There we are. All right, so first question, what are the benefits of being published? Why would someone want to be published? And so you can just jump in and share if you got some thoughts on this.
I think first and foremost, if I can jump in, first and foremost, if you write something, I think our first duty is to put our thoughts and our ideas on page, cement them somewhere where it's tangible. But once you do that, I think most people want to share with the world what their thoughts are. You know what I mean? If you write a song, it'd be like nice if someone can hear it. If a tree falls in the woods and no one's around, does it make a sound? You know? So if you write something and you feel like it has merit, value, you want it to help somebody else. And the best way to do that is putting it out in the world. And there are a ton of different ways to be published. And I'm sure that's going to be another question you're going to ask. So we won't get into that just yet. But I think that's why we want to be published, is because you write something, and if it has value, if you feel like it could add value to the world, you want somebody else to be able to hear it or read it.
Absolutely. Anyone else want to jump in there?
I always think of publishing. I always think about something that I heard from a teacher of mine when I was in graduate school, that a book is a conversation, right? It's the start of a conversation. It's the start of a dialogue, right? So many books, so many poems, so many of the things that we write are always coming from something that we've heard, we've said, we've talked to, we've met this person, we've gone through, we've felt, and then in turn, we're connecting with that reader on that level at the same way too. And it's like Eric said, it's tangible, but it's also long lasting. It's always there. Once you publish a book, you always have that book that you've published. You always have this thing that you've put together and that you've accomplished and you've done. So I think it's just a crowning achievement for someone to get. And I just want to shout out really quickly to Ginger Galloway, who I didn't mention, who started Jammy with me, and also to Cynthia Manick, who's our second editor in New York. I didn't mention these names. I just want to shout out to them really quickly for the work that they're doing for Jammy Publishing too.
Thank you for sharing that, Nakia. Last one, Hiram?
Yeah, I think, as a writer, I'm just caught up in semantics, right? So the word publish, it means to share, like it means to share. And I think when someone say I'm published, they mean that someone else shared my work. And I think that, so I want to talk about both of those, like respectively. So I think it's important for writers to share their work, because I believe that the sharing of it could benefit someone else. Um, and I think the writing of other people benefits us in like untold ways, like throughout the history of time. Like whether I could think about like writers who were writing thousands and thousands of years ago, like who have affected me today. Like I think about like one of my favorite poets is King David, wrote the Book of Psalms, and to me, like like that language resonates with me thousands of years later. And I think about a poem from Kamari's book, Death by Comb, Tracy Ellis Ross hair. Like I'm trying to learn how to do my daughter's hair right now, right? So like I think about that as I'm trying to do that. So I think that, and I can give you other examples. I think about John S. Blake, like whose life was literally saved, like because he heard a poem while he was about to commit suicide, like in a dope house, and then heard this poem, and the poem changed him, right? So I just think that the sharing of work uh, makes people's life better, the sharing of writing. Um, but I think that it's also inspirational, right? Like we've at World Stage Press, we've probably done like 60, at least 60, 70 book releases. And so one person gets on stage and releases a book, right? Their book is published by another group of people. But then like there's always like 10, 15 people who come up to me in the audience and always say like, I've always wanted to publish a book. This is a dream that I've had for a long time. And this book, like being published, makes me want to revisit something that I gave up on. And so I think that the publishing of books is magic. Lastly, I just want to talk about one of the pragmatic benefits of being published by another group of people. Number one, you get some respect, which opens some doors that would be closed, right? There are certain, if you want like a profile on poets.org, right? Like they have criteria. One of them is that you have to either have a book out that was published by another organization or 3 or 4 publications in literary magazines to have a profile on their website, right? So I think that there are certain opportunities that authors can't take advantage of unless they're published by someone else. I think that's sad. I think that's gatekeeping, but like I think that's the truth. But as someone who was published, as someone who first self-published, then was published by a group of people, Figueroa Press out of USC, I think the major benefit was the skills that those people had that I did not have. The skill of like really incredible book design at that point in my life, right? I didn't know how to design books that well. They had, like they didn't do much in the way of marketing, but like they had a website, like they understood what a purchase order was. I didn't know what that was at the time, like the ability to like process a order for 150 books from a college and fill it, right? Like, like I didn't know what a royalty check really was or how it was calculated. So I just feel like the skills of, a small organization, and it was only about 3 or 4 people working in that office together. But I feel like, like I benefited from their knowledge and they taught me a lot.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, there's certain awards, book awards that can only be applied through the press. So self-publishers aren't allowed to apply to those awards. And so there are some tangible benefits like that. I want to jump to the next question, which is, what are publishers looking for from poets or authors? What advice would you have for those poets and authors? And maybe you could just speak for like maybe what you're specifically looking for when you're considering publishing a poet or author.
I know for us at Innate Divinity Books, we're looking for a unique voice. We want a voice that stands out, but also speaks to something that's going to be relatable. We want to highlight voices that are underrepresented. And I think that, I know for me, I'm a huge fan of syntax, very unique syntax. So when I hear people using language in a very creative way, I'm like, I'm interested in where you're going here. But we have a team and we go through and everyone has to kind of agree on who we're going to publish. So some of it will involve the language because that's what's going to stand out to me. And then some of it is going to involve something else that one of our editors may prefer. But I want to say for our group, it's largely about having a unique voice and saying something of substance coming from underrepresented person or group.
Thank you for that, Eric. Anyone else want to add to that?
I can say that for my press, and I think from what I see, like thing I like to do is study poets and see like, why did that poet make it and then another one didn't, or what is it about this press that they're publishing a certain type of voice. And then even just being on the scene a lot, like open mics and just hearing, I think that unfortunately, I think poets have to work a little harder to sound different now. And there's a lot of replication and it's hard to, and so with that, I agree with Eric in that there's not going to be anything new. We know that nothing new under the sun. Even that's cliche in of itself. But how can you make it sound different of your own self and not try to sound like someone else? So like a little bit of a fresh take. And I also think that for me, even relatability, but also are you speaking to something like a cause or something that is relevant in where we are now, reflecting the times? And is it something that someone can kind of hold on to, or are you just like ranting and just spitting out whatever's on your mind? And so I look for that, and then also drive, because sometimes like even if you're not even if you're in a growing phase and you may not be like the best or where you desire to be, if you're hungry and you're workshopping, you're trying, you're putting yourself out there, I think that matters versus like a lot of talented people will still not even try, or they'll just like, oh, they're gonna come to me, or like this whole like ego versus like, hey, have this drive and try to like push yourself out there, push yourself and put yourself out there. So that's kind of what I look for, but definitely fresh takes, because I feel like a lot of poetry now is very similar, and it seems like anything could be called a poem when it's like not the truth, right? So how can you just be a little different and unique?
Ari said something. I don't want to
Yeah.
much time. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You can go.
Really quickly, Kamari mentioned workshops, and that's something I want to add. I'd love to see polished work. We have accepted before work that had a lot of potential, but that ends up being a lot of work on our end. And I think it's best, if you're approaching a publisher, if you're submitting to a publisher, make sure your work is published. Go to workshops, make sure it's the very best work you can submit.
So
And
go
that's
ahead.
what I wanted to add to that question. Like, publishing, there are different places um, that you can look at to publish. We have the sort of larger publishing houses, which will usually publish more formally trained poets. But they're looking for books that are coming from poems that have already been published in magazines. So, you're publishing a poem here, you're publishing a poem in a literary journal. You get a number of those published, you put them together, you get a couple chapbooks together, you put them into a book, and then you send it to some of the larger publishing houses, either a contest or either their open reading periods. That's actually very, very difficult to do. And a lot of times it costs money to submit that way. A smaller publishing house, which is kind of, maybe more niche, which is maybe what Jammy is doing or what someone on this panel is doing. The smaller publishing house, you can establish a relationship with that publisher. You can do things that you might not be able to do with the larger publishing houses, like look at covers, look at some interesting ways if you want to change your layout. So smaller presses tend to have whatever they're looking for. And I love what Kamari said about, looking through what books is that press publishing? What are the voices is that press using? Who are they looking for? Do I fit in with this? Am I going to some of the places? Have I gone to the world stage where Hiram Sims is? And Hiram, I met you one time years and years ago, but I haven't seen you since. So it's good to see you on this panel. But like thinking about like where you are in your own publishing journey can help as well too. And then finally, there's self-publishing. I don't know if we've gotten, into self-publishing per se, into that question, but self-publishing gives you all of that creative control, but you may be losing some of that knowledge that Hiram was talking about, or losing the professional editing, or losing, understanding how this works or understanding how that works. Or, and this is what I really warn people, you need to be careful with self-publishing. You need to be careful for paying for publishing, because some of that can lead you down to some, some things that are not so good. So just kind of being mindful of that there are different ways to publish, very, very different ways to publish. But looking at what is it you particularly want to do? Do you want a book? Do you want a book that's published with a press? Do you want a book that's published with a larger press? Trying to figure that out as you go on your journey, so that you can, not be taken advantage of too, because I've seen that as well.
Nakia, you made a very important point there about how going with certain presses, like especially if they're asking you to pay in order for them to for the privilege of being published. You mentioned that could lead down to some problematic issues. Could you get a little into what some of those problems are, what that could look like? What are some of the risks?
Yeah. So standard, like a standard publishing contract is the publisher is going to have you sign a contract and they're going to have the right to publish your book. You're kind of giving them that right to publish it, to sell it, to list it, to do that. They may offer you royalties, which means they may pay you for, a portion for whatever you sell, or they may not offer you royalties. Those are kind of more the standard kind of publishing contracts that you'll see. If you get into a situation where, and you can find this online, and someone says, hey, give me this money and I'll publish a book for you, you need to be mindful of what is this person actually offering you. If they're offering you layout and editing, I think that's fine. I don't think anything's wrong with that. If someone is helping you with skills and helping you lay this out, but does that mean that you're paying, are you paying like $1,000, $2,000, $5,000 to list your book through Kindle Direct Publishing or Amazon Publishing, which is free? It is free to do that. It does not cost very much. It costs barely anything at all to publish a book. So that is something you should know. It does not cost to self-publish a book. You should not have an upfront cost to self-publish a book. But if you want that help with editing, if you want that help with layout, if you want that help with cover design, that may have a cost involved in it. But ask to see that person's work, or ask what is it that that person is actually selling you? What services are they selling you? And so, so those are the things that I want to be mindful of, and I want people to be mindful of when they think of self-publishing. But I also think that self-publishing is a wonderful, wonderful way to get your work out there if you don't want to jump through the hoops of actually publishing with a company. That can be difficult, right? So I think self-publishing, and right now we're starting to see a lot more respect given to self-published authors. We're starting to see self-published authors who are doing some really fascinating things with their work and who are getting their work out there. And so I just kind of, like I said, it's not about it being bad. It's just that it can lead you down the wrong line. So remember, you should not pay anyone to publish your book, only for layout and designing. Go ahead, Hiram. Have you had a different experience, or?
I actually just want to just co-sign on a lot of the things that you were saying. I feel like a publishing company is like a small investment company, and investment meaning that it's not that the organization exists to make money, right? But the whole concept is like they're supposed to put money up, and so that you and them could sell books and make money together. And I think any company that's asking you for money so that they can finish your book or put your book out, to me, that changes who the customer is, right? So for those, and like the organization calls them like vanity presses, right? Like meaning like they're acting like their business is selling books to the public, but that's actually not their business. Their business is providing services to authors. The author's the customer, not the public. And so I just feel like just call a duck a duck. Like if you want to make money off of authors and providing services to them, to me that's nothing wrong with that. But I just think it shouldn't be masked as, like I was just talking to someone, I'm not gonna name him, but he was telling me that, like he's a he's a press, but he charges authors $2,500 to do all the setup fee, like the setup for them before their book comes out. And to me, that's not what a publisher is. And I actually tell authors, I would tell all these authors that in this room right now, like if you have money, you would, if you're going to self-publish, do that, right? But if you're working with a press and you have some money and you want to use that money to actually sell books, you'd be much better off giving that money to a booking agent
Mhm.
to like book you some performances, at which you would probably sell some books than giving $2,000 to, like a press to do a layout for you. Like you could actually go on Fiverr.com and get those services for like way cheaper. Like you can get a really good book cover for like $80. Like you get a really good layout for $150. Like, and this is not to knock anybody who's doing their thing. And I'm just like, just like be clear with the author about what you can do for them, and what you can't do for them.
I know this isn't part of like, I feel like we're deviating, but Hiram's my brother, so we always like go back and forth. And so I'm trying not to like, this is what I wanted to say. There are hybrid publishers, and I would say like if you are going to pay that fee, I love what Nakia said. Like, what is the work that they've done? And I think the beautiful thing is if you're going to pay someone that money, like what are you saving in time? Like, yeah, you can look on Fiverr and go through tens of thousands of designers, and then I feel like authors already have author freak out, and they already struggle with putting their work out. And I feel like the beautiful thing about working with a hybrid publisher is that you pass all that off. You're saving your time, you're saving your effort, and then all of that freak out you have, like it doesn't even matter because that person has a deadline and they're putting your book out. So like that is something I feel like doesn't get praised enough when it comes to working with people. Yeah, you paying $2,500, but like your book is probably coming out faster versus like how long does it take people to self-publish because they've been on YouTube all day, all month, all year, and they still don't do it. So, you know, another
Thank
option.
you. Thank you for that, Kamari. I feel like from the conversation, we have there's a lot of options available to people, whether you're doing it yourself because you feel inclined uh, uh, to figure stuff out, or whether you're going to a person with a service that's going to help you put it together, and eventually you self-publish it yourself, or you find a press that helps you build that. And then also mentioned that like being active in the poet community and being active in the community that you want to be part of specifically. So there's goth publishers that publishes goth poetry, and queer publishers that publishes queer poets, Latinx, African American. So there is probably a niche for what it is that you're writing, and finding that community and then being actively engaged in them, with them, in order to kind of build that reputation. And also the uh, they have anthologies, they have journals that they put out that you can get published in there prior to putting out your own collection, which gives you a little bit more credibility as well. So I want to jump into a different question. What let's start talking about starting a press. Why a person, like let's say they're published, maybe they self-publish or they publish with a publisher for a while, and they're interested in creating their own press. Why would they want to do that? And what are some skills they would need in order to be successful creating a press?
I'll jump in. I'll jump in really quickly. I know with Jammy, we started, I was actually in a school, and we wanted to give a sort of roadway to authors who may not know how to get published. And we said we could start a press in order to do that. And for us, we were really, really big on community service. We saw authors who were out there doing amazing things. We saw authors who were teachers and authors who were really participating in their community in these really special, special ways. And so we were like, well, could we set this up so it was more like a gift program? Like, we're going to publish your book. It's going to be a gift to you. We're going to take care of everything. We're going to do the layout. We're going to set it up. And then you're going to have this book and you can do whatever you want with it. You know, you pay us half of what it costs to make it, and you sell it, you do whatever you want with it. Well, what's interesting about that model is that in many ways, we feel we're still not doing enough with Jammy, and we've been really like exploring some options in which we can give authors back the rights to their book. And that's something that we think is coming down the road, because we don't like just holding the rights to sell a book, even though we have upfront costs that we pay for this book. We do not ask the authors for anything, we pay for everything. But we're trying to find some different types of publishing models. I'm so excited to hear Kamari and Hiram and Eric and hear what they say about working with communities and working with people who are out there trying to publish. Like, that to me is the life of what it is I'm doing. I love helping people get from one place to the other. And whatever that goal is, you know, your goals are your goals, right? Whether it's, I want to be the one making the books and selling. I want to be the one writing the book. I want to be the one reading it, you know, whatever that goal is, like that's our life bread. I always wish that we could do more. We only have 2 people, so we really can only do everything that we need to do for a book, only about 2 or 3 books a year. But that's why we started Jammy Publishing. And, you know, that's what it's about. It's about really and truly helping people get from one step to the other.
I'll jump in here. Nakia made some great points. One of the things that Nakia mentioned was loving the, and I heard Kamari say something about it as well, falling in love with the process of creating a book, putting this together. I think all of us here love the process. And I feel like that answers both questions. Why would you start a press? Because I love making books. And what skill do you need? That's one of the skills. I don't know if it's a skill, but you need to love the process. Love everything that goes into putting a book together, from the editing, from the formatting, how should the margins look? You know, why do you use blank pages? You know what I mean? Just everything. You should love the whole process, I feel like. That said, some of the specific skills I think are necessary. You have to be a good editor, I think, have a good eye for reading. You have to know the, love reading also, but also know the material you're reading. You know, if you're publishing poetry, please know poetry. You don't necessarily have to be a poet. I feel like it helps, but know poetry. You know what I mean? Understand what's happening. Because that's where certain things come into play, like, well, how does this poem function next to this poem? Well, if you're a poet, or if you understand how that works. And I keep mentioning poetry because we do primarily publish poetry. I think even if you don't have all of these skills, being able to connect with other people who do have certain skills is imperative. I think you also need to be able to connect with the author. You know, sit down and talk to them, find out what is their vision. Yeah, I think you have to be patient and listen to people. And just my perspective, because being a small press, other than the fact that it might be easier to get your work out in the world through a small press, because if Grey Wolf isn't gonna look at your book, you know what I mean? If you're not going to coffee house, then it's easier going through small press. However, why if I'm talking to us, if I'm the author and I'm talking to a small press, I want to feel like they hear me. I want to feel like they're interested in, okay, where is this book going? You know what I mean? That way I'm still retaining some some level of power, because I think the big fear of a lot of authors is, as soon as I give this book out to this press, Penguin takes the book. Yeah, thank you. Here's an advance. This belongs to us now. We're going to do with it what we will. I feel like and I haven't been published through Penguin, so I may be talking out of my behind, but it feels like it can get so big that when you're dealing with a large press, they have all this power. Why should they listen to the little guy? Why should they listen to the author? So a small press, if you're starting something like that, I think one of the skills that's necessary to be successful is to connect with people on a personal level, make them feel heard and that you value their work.
Yeah, it because big presses, they usually have big budgets, but then you're kind of like a cog in the machine, right? With a smaller press, a micro press, they're only putting out a few books a year, so they're probably more willing to work with you on what you want your cover to look like, or how you want to distribute it, and the voice you're trying to get out into the world. And that's one of the benefits of working with a smaller publishing house. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, I wanted to give a response to this question. I think I was just invited to like the California Rare Book uh, Association. Like Robert Montoya has this program that he's doing at UCLA, and then Sean Pessin. I don't know if y'all know who that is, but he's a young guy who has a bookmaking class at CSUN, right? I mention them because they 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 really talk about bookmaking as an art, and I think that making books is an actual art form, and I think that people should start presses that really want to get into that art form, you know. And I think I've seen several people in the Zoom session make incredible artwork with their books, like covers, layouts, you know, the just like, and then the whole just keeps going deeper. Like the, of course, maybe you'll start off making a cover design in Canva, right? And then from there you learn about InDesign, and then from there, like you learn about typography and typeset, and then, then you learn about fonts, then you learn about font faces, then font families, like it just keeps going deeper and deeper, like you learn about like paper poundage, like that, like I didn't know a lot about that spectrum of paper poundage. You got, 100 pounds paper, which is like kind of like photo paper. And then you got the other side of that scale, which is like 10 pound, which is like Bible paper, so I just feel like you start to learn about the actual craft. And I think it's a lot of fun, like to be playing around on your computer and then eventually like see a book in front of you. Like I've seen covers that you've made, James. I feel like you made the cover on your the last book that you worked on in CLI. So I just think it's a real joy to like just put music on and make books. One of the other questions that was in this like group of questions was like how people should go about that. And I think one thing that's an interesting exercise is to like, when you think about a publishing group or a publishing house, like I think you should close your eyes and ask yourself, like, what do you see in your head? And like, can you replicate that in the world? And so I'm a big fan of, although I didn't do this, it came later. Like I'm a big fan of apprenticeship. like really taking time to study under people who are already doing it. And that will sort of clarify the picture of what it can look like. And so there's so many different small presses that will allow you to like volunteer for them or intern for them. And I think that to me, the most developed press that has this great internship program is Red Hen. Like their internship program is just like incredibly developed. But I think you start to see a picture of like, oh, this is what it looks like, to work with authors. I think one thing that really changed everything for us at World Stage Press is like reading this book called The E-Myth Revisited. I'm gonna put it in a chat. And The E-Myth Revisited is a book about getting a clear picture of what a complete team is, and then the process by which to go from working by yourself to having a complete team. And like that book changed my life. Like, I mean, just hands down, we went to like just working with just like one person to now there's, at least in World Stage Press, there's like six, like having a complete staff there, which has its challenges, right? World Stage Press is by far from perfect, but it's come a long way. But that book, The E-Myth, it'll tell you, like how to have a complete team. Yeah. So those are my recommendations. And don't
Okay.
think lastly, sorry, James, don't think that you can't have a complete team because you don't have money. Like you can find people who want to do this work, who also want to create a press, but one of them's good at marketing, and one of them's good at accounting, and one of them's good at book design, and one of them's good at administration. And you all can actually work together, like to create something powerful. But that book, changed a lot for me. Thank
You
you.
know,
Sorry, James.
no, I want to throw something in really quickly about, and this is kind of bouncing off of you, Hiram. I would say if you really want to do this, make a book. Go on ahead and just make a book. Do the research, figure out how to go ahead, how to go about making a book. What is it that books need? What kind of companies you can use, KPD, Lulu, make the book and see how that feels to you. And don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to mess up. Don't be afraid to do something that's unique or that's different. A few years ago with Inlandia, we did what was called a homespun chapbook series where we hand made books and none of us knew what we were doing. It was just a few of us in the community and it was the most fun. We actually brought someone in to teach us how to do book binding because we did not know how to make a homemade book. We did not know how to make a book by hand. But it was community. It was working together. It was people doing things together and learning things together. So I would say if you want to start this, instead of thinking about the whole business model and how I'm going to set this up and how I'm going to make a book, get a couple of people together, make a few books, see how that feels, and then start going from there. And that's all I want to throw in.
Thank you, Nakia. Thank you, Hiram. I think it's I like what you said, Nakia, about making the book and you can make zines, right? You can do small scale. You can it you can sell without having it be formal. You can take the zines you put together yourself and you print it at Kinko's, and you can take it to the farmer's market and set up your table and sell your thing there. And that may be, the route you want to do, or you may want to do something more formal. But one thing to keep in mind is it's a lot of work, and this industry isn't like high profit industry. So like when you're making that decision, understand that it's a labor of love. It's something you do have to be passionate about because if you're not one of the 5 big presses, financially it can be a little challenging as far as like a business model. Last question I would like to ask the panelists is, what would you say to someone that's maybe scared of rejection or doesn't feel like their work is good enough yet to be published?
I kept hearing a lot. Get used to rejection. It's part of the game. I know that doesn't sound very encouraging, but I know that's been part of the reason some people go to small presses, because it feels like there's a higher likelihood of getting published. I think that there's an important consideration to make here, is that why is the work getting, so on some level, sometimes it's that you just got the wrong editor on the wrong day. You know, the next person might be like, this is perfect for exactly what we need. But also there needs to be a question of, okay, is my work strong enough? Am I writing my best work? Is there something else that I can do to elevate my skill? So on one hand, don't let it discourage you. On the other hand, keep looking for, how can I elevate my skill? How can I make sure that I am? Because your voice is important, absolutely. Voice and skill, two different things. You know what I mean? How can I best present my work?
I love that, Eric. I attended a workshop. Kelly Grace Thomas, she's awesome and a great resource. Anybody who is looking, she had this program called Brainstorm to Book Deal. And basically it was talking about submitting, but also if you use Submittable. And the whole goal is to actually aim to get rejected 100 times. But when you do get rejected, like let's say you're doing like for a poem or a piece or a fiction, whatnot, every time you get rejected, tweak that work. Because sometimes like maybe there's a typo, maybe there's like a better word choice. And I think it goes back into like what you said, Eric, like, is your work polished? Is this the best that you did? Like, is this the best? And I think we have to like bring back that art of going back and like tweaking and like constantly tweaking our work, not to where it's like, you know, thinned out and there's like nothing there, but every time you get rejected, like think about it, like revisit your work and say like, is this the best? Am I on key here? Does it sound like something else? Is this really authentic? So that's what I say.
Hiram?
Yeah. When I saw this question on the sheet, you know, like what advice would we have for people who fear rejection? My first thought was just like, get over it, right? Which is, it's kind of like the dude answer, you know, like to me, like I say dude because it sounds like my pops and my uncles are just like man up and just, you know, but I do think it's a part of the community. Like it's a part of function in the community. Like what I thought about Wanda Coleman submitting poetry and getting 2,000 rejection letters before her first poem got published. And then she went on to publish 8 books. And now there's the Wanda Coleman Public Library on Florence in LA, right? Like, so obviously there was some perseverance there and probably some modification, you know, like of what she submitted, who she submitted to. And I think all these questions are important to answer. Like, does the work need to improve or have I submitted to the wrong group? You know, like there was a website, I don't know if y'all remember, called Duotrope. It still exists, but it used to be free. And Duotrope listed all of the magazines that were accepting uh, publications. And at the time, I was probably like 24, and I was like, I just want my work to be published. I literally didn't care who published it. So I submitted work to all these like places, and I got a rejection letter from this one place, and they were like, thank you for submitting to us. We're a neo-Nazi publication. So we're not gonna publish your work because you're black and we don't like y'all, but good luck, right? It's probably the nicest rejection letter you could get from Nazis. But I just find that sometimes there has to be a more conscious effort to find the match, right? Rather than like I just want somebody to put me out. It's just like, who are the people who are right for me? And yeah, if I had read their literary journal before I submitted, I would have known that, right? So I just find that there's this feeling like, don't, I say this to myself a lot, like, don't let your desire to be heard outpace the quality of what you have to say. Like,
Mhm.
and there has to be a match there, and a desire to find publishers or publications that want to publish you. When I found Figueroa Press at the LA Times Festival of Books, I had talked to 10 different presses, but they were like, we want to. I didn't mention the fact that I'm a creative writing professor. I'm a poetry professor that was, from USC, and they were looking for uh, creative writers and who were connected to USC, who wrote poetry about the community. And I'm like, boom, right? Like, that's like all of my work. So I just feel like it takes some research to find the group of people who are looking for you, and you who are looking for them.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Hiram. Um, so yeah, I want to add that there are resources out there at every level to help individuals reach their goals in the publishing world. So if you want to submit more, there's groups like Women Who Submit that can help you like submit more and get prepared to submit. There's submission parties that groups have where they get together as a group and everyone, submits, and when you submit something, they like celebrate you. Oh, new poem submitted to this journal, this publication. So you don't have to feel like you're doing it alone. If you're not sure about being able to read or share in front of people, there's groups like Cobalt Poets, Apocalypse Poets that you can go to and share work that's not complete yet, that work that you're just testing out, and they're supportive groups. If you need to work on your writing a little bit, there's Inlandia has writing workshops that they offer during the week that are available. I have a monthly writing workshop on social justice called Be the Change Writing Workshop through my organization, Lift Our Voices Education. So there's a variety of resources out there to connect. When after I published my first two publications, I realized that I wanted to grow and learn more. And so I joined Hiram's organization, CLI, to help me go through refining the process of creating my books, and to do it with the team so that I can be a better poet and put out better work. And that was an incredible experience, and he runs a wonderful program over there. So don't be afraid. There is space for your voice to be heard. You just have to connect, as I mentioned, with the right people and the right groups to accomplish that. Now I want to pivot to opening up question and answer for the group. We have about like 15 minutes. So I know we did get a question from Elizabeth early on. So Elizabeth, are you still here? Did you want to ask your question?
I am here. Thank you. I was looking at my question in the chat that I had sent to James. All right. So, my question was about distribution. So I was curious how your small presses distribute the books or like do marketing, and how, like, what the difference is between the marketing and distribution that would get done with a small press, either yours like in particular or in general, versus like a, like a bigger, I guess, like publishing house. Just to like keep in mind like how how much like the book would get out into the world in different ways.
So there are different ways to distribute a book. Usually a larger publishing house will do a print run of anywhere to like, 250, 500, 1,000 copies, which means that they go in ahead and they just kind of pay and they get that whole print run with whatever print company that they're using to print those many copies, and they keep those copies on hand. Small publishers, some do that, some do a print run, but some also will do publishing on demand, which is through maybe another print on demand company like Kindle Direct Publishing or Lulu or something like that, in which they're only publishing or they're only printing just as many books as are ordered or as are needed or whatever. Books can be distributed directly through Amazon. If you're doing like Kindle Direct Publishing, Amazon would then distribute your book, which means you would order the book through Amazon or whatnot. If you're doing like your own print run and you have your own printing company or whatnot, Ingram Spark could also be another company that you might go through. And it could be listed through a book distribution company like Small Press Distribution Company, which means that they would then be kind of selling the book for you. They would then be housing and selling the book for you. So if you're doing self-publishing and you go through one of these companies, you can do all that yourself as a self-published book. You can go through Kindle Direct Publishing, you can go through Ingram Spark. You can do that yourself for your own book and just kind of have your own book. But you can also kind of not do that and find out a way to do a print run if you want to hire a print run yourself. So there's a million and one ways to do this. There's a lot of ways that you want to do this, but it tends to be standard to either do print on demand if you're a small press, or to do an actual print run of a number of copies and have it distributed by Amazon, by Barnes and Noble, by something like that. That tends to be typical.
I want to add that there is there's another process. I agree with everything that Nakia had said, and I know Nakia has more experience in that than I do. Some people will take a few of their books and go hit the ground, go find bookstores. I know one of our team had developed a relationship with a Barnes and Noble, a local Barnes and Noble, got a few of their books placed on shelves. Now that will bring up other issues. We're talking about like ISBN numbers. ISBN numbers, that is redundant because the N does stand for number. So I know we all get that. So there are a few other ways as well. Everything Nakia said, 100% accurate. There does come into play considering what types of venues will actually hold your book, because for a chain as large as Barnes and Noble, they're going to want to be able to return the book if they need to, and that does require having a relationship or having your book listed on something like Ingram Spark, I believe, or a different printer that will actually allow that. And you do want an ISBN that's owned by a press or owned yourself, because if you go through one of those, like Nakia mentioned earlier, it does not cost a lot to self-publish a book. If you go through something like KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing, they have an option to use their free ISBN. But in that instance, they own that, okay? And some stores will not carry your book or will not order your book, and Barnes and Noble being one. So I will say that with marketing through a small press, hopefully the small press will be doing some footwork for you, but usually the author is going to do a lot of footwork on their own. If you want to do your marketing, if you want strong marketing campaign, you're going to have to do some research, develop some relationships locally. I know one of the strongest marketing things for me when I was doing my first book. I performed a lot, and I'd still walk into a room, nobody really knows who I am, but if you can get on the mic and actually put on a strong performance, now people are looking, hey, how can I take your work home with me? And now you've got something in hand. That's another way to create relationships.
All right, thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you both.
Let's go to Daniela.
Oh, I'm sorry, Hiram, I saw that hand go up. I want to hear what you got to say.
Okay, Hiram, go ahead.
Real quick, I just wanted to say that more than likely, it'll be more than one. You know, like that more than one distribution channel that you'll end up using over time. You may start with one, but it'll probably be more than one. It's kind of like taking payment, right? Like if you are an author who's selling books, and like you'll be like, hey, I have a Venmo, and somebody will be like, do you have Cash App? You know, like, do you have PayPal? Do you take credit cards? And I think that on it's important to be able to accept all of them, right? So that you don't lose a sale. But I think that the World Stage Press, we there's really like 4 to 5 distribution channels, right? There is KDP, and there is like your own website. And I think that there's the benefit of selling books on your own website is that more than likely the royalty for the author will be higher than it'll be on KDP, depending on where you print, because KDP is a printer, but Amazon is a bookstore. So Amazon is going to want a cut of that book just like they were a regular bookstore. But then you might have, you know, like you selling books at a table. Like most of these presses have like tables and a tablecloth. So like that's a viable distribution channel. And then you have the author's trunk of their car, right? So that's, which I think is the best one out of all of them. So you got those 4. I also want to just recommend people to check out SPD, which is Small Press Distribution, which is a really great service for people if you can go through like the, you know, the paperwork of getting all of that set up, you know. But I think it's important for an individual author and a press to just be flexible about how people can get the book, because you might be at a show and you might have 20 books on you and then sell out and got 20 more people who want them. You should be able to direct them somewhere, you know, like to go get the book. So I just think it's a mix. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Hiram. Daniela.
Hi, first I want to say thank you to the speakers. I came in late, so I didn't hear all the introductions. So James, are you going to make this available for people to listen to again in the future, number one?
Yes, it will be available, I believe, on YouTube and Atlantia's website.
Perfect. Okay, I'll try to get to my stuff really fast. I work in PR and marketing, and I've worked with writers in different capacities. And so I was just wondering, do you guys work with established writers who need help? That was one question. The other question that I had is are you only dealing with poetry, or are you dealing with fiction and nonfiction? So those were just 2 of my 7 questions. Well, 3. Occupational hazard, I'm sorry, I'm a journalist by training, so we ask a lot of questions.
They did talk a little bit about like the in their intros, the customers that they served. I know that they all do work with poets, but
Right, I got that part.
if you work with someone like a fiction or something else, you can jump in.
So I will say we have not yet worked with an established poet, but I mean, if Patricia Smith hit me up like, hey,
no, I didn't mean it like that. I mean, like I have an author. She's written something that really is a forerunner to Panther, and So, but she hasn't gotten the, so I'm just wondering, would you take an author who's already been writing? Would you take them up another level? That's all I was just wondering. And she's been self-publishing, but I'm just curious, just from some of the writers I've dealt with in the past, who are great writers, great people.
I think each of us are open to working with anyone who's got strong work that we believe in. And I'm not trying to speak for everyone. I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and say my group. We are open to working with anyone who's got strong work that we believe in and we believe represents the message that we're trying to put out into the world. What was the second question? Because
Well, my first one was, because I know Hiram, because I go back and forth between the IE and LA. So I've gotten to know Hiram, and then, but I was wondering, since I've learned about Mama's Kitchen from one of the writers I wrote on, so thumbs up, love it. But I was wondering if you were available for nonfiction or fiction writers. So like I have a client I'm working with now, she has a stake in LA history that's just beautiful. She needs a book. Sometimes it may be a coffee table book, or maybe it's kind of a nonfiction book. So I don't know if you're open to that, but I just thought it was really beautiful. And I was just talking to her last night. I mean, I don't want to say her name because this is my, I want to take it from concept to creation, because it's a beautiful, beautiful legacy. So was that clear? Was I clear? I don't know. Sometimes I run my ideas together.
I know we are at Jammy Publishing. I know we are open to kind of more unusual books. Some of our poetry books also include illustrations and artwork and things like that. So, I mean, I would suggest you tell her to send it to me. I'll take it. We can look through it and see if the manuscript is something we would want to do. Our criteria, though, is that we do look for authors who are part of like some kind of community service project, or who's doing something in the community. So that's kind of like our criteria. But for the other authors, I would suggest you get our press names, get our contact information. If we're taking submissions, just have her send it. Have her send it on and introduce herself. I'm open to that. I know I am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to drop your emails, I didn't know I dropped the websites, but in there. But if you want to drop your emails that you have for your presses, you can drop that as well. And then we'll jump to
Thank you.
Carmen's question. Thank you, Daniela, for your question. Carmen, you want to unmute yourself?
Thank you. Thank you, Inlandia, for sponsoring this. Very interesting, though I was late. I was at home and I missed that part of it. But my question to you, and thank you for the facilitators also. My question to you is, I don't know which of you mentioned that team. I am interested on that team, but that's why I was asking if anybody in Riverside, because I would like to team up with 1 or 2 or 3 more people who like to collaborate together, because I'm good at certain things, but I'm not good at others. And if there's anybody in Riverside who is willing to or want to, I have a place to meet, and we can do it through Inlandia, because I mentioned this to Kathy before and to Janine. If you guys are interested, I am up for it, and we can meet at the Gosky Center in Riverside. And if you're not familiar, it's on Sierra and Strader, and I really need to publish my manuscript. I have 4. I already published 1. I have 5 books that I like to do a series. So it's a children's book.
Okay, Carmen, we can, if you want to drop your email in the chat, then folks in the area want to reach out, and then, maybe talk to Inlandia about how to form a group, or maybe sharing on the Landia Facebook page that you're looking to connect with local writers. That might help a lot. Thank
That
you.
would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I want to give a chance to the panelists, any final closing remarks that they would like to give.
If you go into this business, don't expect to get rich. Yeah, do it for the love. Do it for the love. Yeah, love the process, love the books, love reading, love whatever material that it is you're looking to put out into the world. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Eric. That is absolutely true. Anyone else want to give a
Yeah, and I always just say, oh, go ahead, Kamari. Oh, I thought someone was speaking.
My thinking phase. I didn't unmute.
No, I just want to say that, poetry is hard. It's hard in a lot of ways, right? It's very, very difficult in a lot of ways, but there is something that is very like forging about it. And, this is a very special journey because not many of us do this, right? Like Eric said, there's no money in it. There's very little money in it, but there's a lot of love in it. And so if this is where you're going and where you're finding your interest in, there are so many different ways that you can go about doing this. There's so many different things that you can do. And that's all I'm going to say. Like, form a community, hit us up, find people who are interested in it, go to those readings, support each other, buy each other's books, be that support system, be that community that we need, because, we're out here doing it, and it's its own journey.
Thank you for that, Nakia. Hiram, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, first of all, it's been an incredible experience being here with 4 Black publishers, because I feel like the publishing of Black writers is ancient, and goes back probably about 250 years in this country, but I think it's an ancient practice. And so, I'm proud to just be among all of you. Also want to say that if you want to do this full time, you can. You actually can do it. And it's going to take a while for you to do it, but it is actually possible. And, I know about 8 different presses that started off super small in a garage, 1 or 2 people, and are now, doing it full time. The most recent one I was talking to was Daniel Lisi with Not a Cult. And, he was saying that, he's been doing it full time for 3 years, and, he sells 17 at minimum, like he averages.
Oh, wow.
Oh, we lost Hiram.
Yeah, I think that I know that story he was gonna say about Daniel Lisi they sell about 1,500 books a month. I remember him telling me that at least, and it is possible. There's this quote that I saw, like I was cleaning out my iCloud, and the quote said, like if it exists, then it's possible. Like if it exists in the world, if there are people that are living making a living with work, or even like a part-time living, or just sometimes just like for the love of it, like you love books so much, if it exists, then it is possible. I think that one thing I wanted to mention earlier in terms of if you do want to start a press, like you really got to know what your mission is, or else like I feel like the love will fall off. It's like, I'm just gonna put out books. I feel like that's really nebulous, but I think it's like, what kind of books, what are you really curating in the world? And even though there are you know, so many presses out in the world, and that could feel like really daunting, but there are so many McDonald's and Burger Kings. We know that story, right? So the thing is, what is your unique take on it? And really just don't give up. I mean, I'm coming from like 1 year in, so everyone here on the panel is like way like more, you know, I'm like the baby of the presses, and so I'm taking everything with me as well, like not giving up and just like taking it like nice and slow and steady. And if I had to say like any skills that they're really like soft skills that you can't teach, which is like perseverance, patience, and curiosity. You have to be curious about what type of work you want to put out there and how can you make it happen. Problem solving, good administrative skills. That's if you're doing it on your own. Like I'm coming from like I'm just starting, so it is just me, and I would love to have a team. But until that happens, what skills am I having to develop? I'm having to develop organization, having to develop boundaries, and like you know that type of thing that are a little more soft skills. But yeah, you can watch the recording about like all the other things you'll need. But if I could just say anything, my take is just if it exists, it's possible, and you can totally do it.
For
Thank
Hiram
you.
Sims, I just want to say invest in a strong Wi-Fi, people.
That's, I'm sure. There he is. There he is.
Hey.
Hey, Hiram. Kamari finished the story for you.
Good. Thank you.
So.
Thank you. All that, you know, it's funny. I was like, man, my computer died like right in mid sentence during my Jerry Springer final thought, right? And I was like, but thank you, Kamari, who's always clutch. But I just want to
It's
say,
so funny.
like, that there are people who have done it, and it took them years, but that they did it. You know, like, and they're doing it, and it's a struggle, you know, but it is possible. It's possible to do it for a living if you want to, you know, like, but that apprenticeship and that like hard work, you know, like our World Stage Press averages like 100 books a month, you know, like Not a Code averages 1,700 a month, you know, like, which is how they're able to do it. But I just think that it's possible. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that, Hiram. It's possible. You heard it. Panelists said it. So it could be you too. I wanted to respect everyone's time. So I want to give thanks to Nakia, to Kamari, to Eric, to Hiram for being here today, for everyone that tuned in. Thank you, Atlantia, for offering Blacklandia events. Definitely keep them in mind. Check them out. And I'm going to pass it over to Katie for any closing remarks for Atlantia?
I just want to say thank you to all of you guys for being here and for offering your insights and, you know, all of your experience. So that's really about it. And for anybody who didn't catch it in the chat, I did drop a flyer for some things we have upcoming, including James' workshop. So please check our website, and we will all see each other here again before too long. Thank you also to the California Arts Council for program support. And if you are interested in writing for children, we will be at the Riverside Public Library on September 1st in person for Arts Walk. That'll be the first of many in-person programs there focused on writers coming up this next year. And so thank you, James. Thank you, Nakia. Thank you, Kamari. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Hiram. And thank you to our audience. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.